There's something also we're gonna have a conversation on because it does happen to have its roots also in the slavery era, is the adultification of Black children. The reality is we're seeing conservatives now executing their agenda by way of saying they need to keep children safe. And to the extent that that references to children, even though we know it's veiled for all sorts of nonsense, but we definitely know that it's only cishet white children. And we see this time and time again as Black children are deemed threatening or dangerous or hypersexualized simply because they exist. For example, in April, 16-year-old Ralph Yarl, who you can see pictured here. We're gonna put up his photo, although I'm sure you've probably seen it because it was all across the news. And when he was shot in Kansas City, Missouri, when he accidentally knocked on the wrong neighbor's door when he was trying to pick up his siblings. And the teen's assailant, Andrew Lester, 84-year-old white man, pictured here. He stated that he thought Ralph was trying to break into his home and he was scared to death due to the boy's size. Ralph is a lanky 5'8" kid under 140 pounds. Get out of here. Also in May, a Mississippi cop named Greg Capers, he shot 11-year-old Adrienne Murray, whose photo we'll put up here. That child had called police for help, but he was faced with deadly violence and left with incredible amounts of trauma.
Sometimes I can see myself laying inside the coffin. Them are my thoughts at night, my only ones. And sometimes I think people are watching me. But my main thought is me dead.
11 years old, that's a child. The adultification of Black children, it's illogical, it's wholeheartedly racist, and it's incredibly harmful. Being seen as adults negatively impacts kids' emotional, mental, and physical health. And it makes it more likely that they're gonna be subject to unwarranted punishment and even disciplinary disparities. For example, we know that Black children are far more likely to be subject to suspension and expulsion in the academic educational climate for the same behavior in which that their white colleagues, classmates engage in. And as we just spoke about, the educational disparities that are already present because of segregation, it just shows you that this is very much a part that is built into the fabric. And also we have to consider the intersectionality when gender comes into play because it compounds the harm. Black girls perceived as being less innocent, more mature for their age. And you can see from this graph here from a report that was released by Georgetown Law that Black girls are not afforded the same opportunity to be children. They're hypersexualized. They are mistreated just like Black boys are too. And the thing is nothing has changed, but it clearly seems to come from all of these roots of white supremacy, really dehumanizing Black people, making out Black boys and girls to be adult-like. And society justifies harsher treatment and hypersexualization every day. And again, Sharon, I know it's not our jobs to remove the boot from our necks, but what do you think needs to be done to address these issues?
Boy, it's a direct question, but there's just no easy answer. And I'm still reeling from the soundbite you played to have a little boy. He sounded paranoid, didn't he? He sounded paranoid. I picture myself in a coffin. I feel like people are watching me, but you're not paranoid if it's actually true. You are being watched when you go into a store, when you walk by a door, when you knock on the wrong door, you are being watched. And sadly, there's a mom who can't look at her son and say, you're not gonna end up in a coffin. I mean, the way I parent my own child who's just being a child and may mention something and everything has to be a teachable moment. I'm so worried, like, well, you don't wanna play, you don't knock on people's doors and run and stuff that kids do sometimes. You don't even wanna discuss it because I immediately have that fear. What can be done? I don't know, because just when I think there's a line that we can educate our kids to, Adrienne, there's something that crosses it and we learn something else horrific. And a mother is dead over an iPad with the kids watching her take her last breath. I don't know. I just don't know.
It's trauma on top of trauma. This is the thing, I always talk about how it's an illustration of our society. So if our society deems certain folks a certain way, that's the way it generally goes. So if it's been that way since, say, the beginning of the country, and we have this slow progression, you would think, as we talk how proud we are about our progress, oh, we've gone so far since the civil rights era and since enslavement and all these types of things, we've gotten so far. If we're proud of it, why don't we talk about it? Why don't we talk about how we've gotten from point A to point B to point C to point D, if we've even gotten that far? The folks, a lot of times, that are rejecting the idea of progress or actually doing something different to where our society sees certain folks, if we want to change that, we would talk about it. Instead, we have blockades and shut up, don't mention that. Just in general, when it comes to the way folks are seen in society, like the young kid who was traumatized by thinking about and seeing himself in that coffin. How much do people really relate to him? How much do they see their own children in him? We just spoke earlier about schools and desegregation, how schools are still segregated to a very large degree all over the country. I'm in Los Angeles. I've dealt through that with my child. He's been in 3 elementary schools. I see it. It's not like a lib city thing. It's the way people react from community to community. So how do you change a society? It takes a lot of time. It takes a lot of understanding. It takes people listening. So if people don't understand or believe, oh, here's 3 black folks on a Juneteenth special complaining again, which I'm sure people would see and think, how much do you really learn from that? How much do you understand? Do you think that we all collect an email every morning and go, this is what we're gonna complain about today? Or maybe we have similar type of experiences that illustrate how our society treats us. But if we see things like Black Lives Matter protests or rallies or discussions, and people say, oh, what are you talking about? All lives matter. When we see kids get assaulted, killed, treated a certain way, and you don't care, you're proving right there how much you don't care about someone else's life. If you can't see them as the same, or at least the same worth, when it comes to economic to any other levels that keep certain people down, it will continue. How does that change is the hardest question.
Exactly, and the thing is I maintain, and I will always maintain, that this isn't a problem Black people need to fix. This is what white people need to fix. They created this situation in this country and they cannot ignore it. And anybody who chooses to ignore it is part of the problem. And they're opting to be part of the problem because we've been in your face for centuries, letting you know this is unacceptable, that we deserve better. And for you to continue to allow it to persist, and if not enable it, that tells me you are very much a part of the problem.